Welcome back, my friends, and today we are going to take up lesson 4 of Unit 1, which is Economic Environment. If you remember, we started with business environment and its various components. We discussed business environment can be divided into external and internal environment. Now, in case of external environment, we discussed about macro and micro environment. Under the macro environment, we discussed political environment in detail in lesson 2. In lesson 3, we talked about the government intervention, why it is required, and why it is required specifically in business. And lesson 4 today, our agenda is to cover economic environment. The learning outcomes are macro environment factors, and then we'll look at the components of economic environment, which consist of economic systems, economic conditions, and economic policies. We'll try to understand how these three components affect the business. And then we'll take up the global scenario and the Indian scenario for the economic environment. Let us start with macroeconomic factors. So we discussed the political environment, and today we are taking up the macro environment, which is economic environment. Now, when we talk about the economic environment, there are two types of factors. One is the macroeconomic factors and the other is the microeconomic factors. Since we are talking about the macro environment, we'll take the macroeconomic factors which affect the country as a whole rather than specific households or specific business. So we'll be focusing on macroeconomic factors. Now, when we talk about the components of economic environment, and in order to understand the economic environment and how it is going to affect the business, we need to understand three things. Number one, the economic system, what sort of systems exist. Number two, economic conditions. And number three, economic policies, because all three affect the business in different ways. Let us take these one by one. When we talk about the economic systems, so generally in the global arena, you have the command economies, you have the mixed economies, and you have the free market economies. So if you look at this diagram, where on the x-axis you have the resource allocation, and the y-axis you have the resource ownership. So the ownership moves from state to private. Either it is owned by the state, that is by the country, or by the private sector. Similarly, resource allocation is in terms of market and command. Before I take up this, it is very important to understand what is economics. Although you will be studying in detail in one of the courses under MBA, but economics is always connected with scarcity of resources. For example, you have X amount of money and you want to buy 2 or 3 products. You don't have enough money to buy all the products which you want, maybe a laptop as well as a desktop as well as a mobile phone, but you don't have enough money. So either it is the scarcity of resources, also there is scarcity of time, right? So economics is connected with scarcity. So since the resources are scarce, we also discussed under government intervention, the role of the government is to one, efficiently use the limited resources, and second, the resources should be evenly distributed to all the citizens of the country. So here also, when we talk about the economic systems which are built on the economy, right? So you have the resource allocation and the resource ownership. If the resource ownership is with the state, right? So we call it as a socialism. And if it is driven by the market, and it is not restricted by the government or controlled by the government, then it is market socialism. So if it is ownership is with the state, driven by market, it is market socialism, which is the best way if things work out. So if it is in the private hands and driven by market, it is market capitalism. If it is with a command, not by a market, and it is private, then centrally planned capitalism. That means some big companies, they control those resources. If it is owned by the state and also commanded by the state, so there are certain countries where there is no market, free market, and it is owned by the state, that is centrally planned socialism. So rather than going into the details of this chart, let us discuss about the command economies, mixed economies, and free market economies. India is a mixed economy if we talk about India. Other examples could be for command economies: China before 1979, Cuba, North Korea. You might be hearing a lot of things about North Korea because it is a command economy. So it is owned by the state and is commanded. Everything, resource allocation is in the hands of the state. Poland before 1990. Mixed economies: China after 1979 when they opened up. France is a mixed economy. India is a mixed economy. Poland after 1990. Sweden. Similarly, free market economies. We talked about ease of doing business, and New Zealand and Singapore were two countries you were asking, although they are so small, how come they can achieve that rank. So because Singapore is a free market economy, US is a free market economy. So you need to understand the economic system because that is going to affect your business. So if you want to start anywhere in any country, you must know the economic system of that country as first thing. Then comes the economic conditions. Under economic conditions, so we need to understand what are the economic factors which affect the economic condition of that state or of that country. It is the inflation, it is the recession, it is the business cycle, it is income and employment, it is the economic growth, price level. So all these factors you need to consider to know the condition of that country or of that region. Now, how will you look at these factors? How will you judge these factors? So there has to be certain indicators. So these are the economic indicators. For example, I want to run my business. I want to take loan from the bank or the money from the bank. So what are the interest rates? So those indicators I should know. What is the inflation rate? So if I have to be working in that particular region, what is the inflation rate? How much is the disposable income? Because if I have to sell my products or services to the people of that region, so how much disposable income is available in that region? What is the value of rupee if I have to import or export some of the things? So what is the value of rupee? And lastly, I need to look at the stock market indices for the top companies, the blue chip companies, and how it is varying and how it has been varying over a period of time. Then we look at the economic policies, so economic systems, economic conditions, and then economic policies. When we talk about the economic policies, we need to look at the structure and nature of economy first. So we need to look at the levels of development. If we talk of India, even today 70% of the population lives in rural areas. So in terms of the development which has mostly happened in the urban areas, so what is the level of development? As a country as a whole, it is a developed nation or developing nation or underdeveloped nation. Then within the country, the sectoral composition of output. For example, they produce more commodities or they are into service sector more. Is tourism is the main thing, agriculture is the main thing. So what is the sectorial composition of the output, of the yield of the country? And then inter-sectorial linkages. So how they are connected, how they are linked, and which all sectors contribute towards that particular output. So you need to understand that is what we call as the structure as well as the nature of economy for the policies, because the policies can have even composition of output and good intersectorial linkages. So then we look at the global linkages, which is later on, but before that, the economic policies. So if I talk about the economic policies, we need to look at the industrial policy, the trade policy, the foreign exchange policy, the foreign direct investment and technology policy. We are going to discuss all these in detail because policies are very important. And lastly, the fiscal and monetary policy. So we'll discuss in detail fiscal and monetary policy because this is how the government or the policy tries to control the flow of money in the market, and also through the taxes how the government is able to get the money to be used for different infrastructure development. When we talk about the global linkage, so what is the magnitude and nature of cross-border, like how the country is connected with the neighboring countries in terms of the trade. So what are the trade flows? What are the financial flows? Are they importing more? Are they exporting more? And whether the commodities are exported more or the services are exported more, all these things. And whether that country is a member of World Trade Organization, International Monetary Fund, World Bank, trade blocks. So you need to look at these are the global linkages that you need to look. So the economic policies is going to affect, all the policies are going to affect your business. So you must understand what sort of policies are there. So now, having discussed the economic environment and the components, which is economic system, economic condition, and then the economic policies. Let us take some of the examples how you look at things, and these are some of the case studies from the global environment and from the Indian environment. Firstly, how you look at those. So there is a website of UnitedNations.org, and they have a division which is DESA, which we'll talk just now in the next few slides. So from there you can get the data. I've provided the URL below which you can see. So what's in store for the global economy? Let us look at the disposable income for 2020. Remember, these predictions were made for 2020 before the pandemic. So if you look at the world, it is at, these are in US dollars, right? So it is at 11,300. This is the per capita income. So if we look at the developed economies, $47,100. So economies in transition, there are many countries that are moving from the developing economies to the developed economies. So similarly, the developing economies is around 5,500. So if you look at some of the continents, Africa is one such continent which has the lowest per capita income, which is 2,000, which is far below than the world per capita income, 11,300, whereas Africa is at 2,000. So you need to understand whichever continent you are going to. So you need to look at that. So if we look at the gross product as another indicator of the economic condition, so the global growth is has been to the lowest 10-year low. This graph again from United Nations website, which talks about the World Economy Report, which they present every year. So it is free, you can go there. And when I said DESA, DESA, that is the Department of Economic and Social Affairs, which is under the UN. So they collect the data and they give the data to the world. So if we talk about the world gross product, it has gone down. So in 2019, it has touched 2.3. This is a percentage change. So it has gone down to 2.3. This data is from 2010 to 2020 for the last 10 years. So for the last 10 years, if you look at the gross product from around 4.25, it has gone down to almost 2.3. Similarly, if we talk about per capita growth, right? So this is the GDP per capita growth which we are looking at. Sorry, there is a mistake in the title. It should be GDP, not GAP. So 1 in 5 countries will see per capita income stagnate or decline this year. This was the forecast before the COVID. So if you look at this chart, so you have the legend which is over here. So if you look at India or East Africa, right, East Asia, sorry. So they are over there. It is going to be greater than 4%. Right? So if you look at Africa, as we were discussing, so that is going to be less than 0.5. So this gives you the very good growth projection for the GDP per capita. So of each continent, of each country, and the details are available on the website. I encourage you to go and explore that. Let's talk about India a little bit. So this is a wonderful site. The Department of Commerce, Government of India has put up a dashboard. Dashboard is which keep on changing. So it is using the analytics and all the data is analyzed at the back end and you get a dashboard like this. So where it tells you about 2019-20 I picked from here. You can go to this website and do this what I. So this is a monitoring dashboard where we are looking at the merchandise and services trade India did during 2019-20. So if you look at the exports and year-on-year growth has gone down minus 5.1. So if you look at imports, it has gone down minus 7.7 as compared to 18-19. So this is the trade balance. This is for the merchandise trade, and this is in the service trade. So if you look, we are exporting more in the merchandise than in the services. Similarly, when you look at the imports, it has gone down by 18%. That is the import that we were doing. So that means we were good in terms of having exporting the services rather than importing, which is a good sign, and trade balance is positive, whereas for merchandise the trade balance is negative. So all these things you can see. So similarly, if we talk about the territory-wise trade in US for 1920, like with which all continents we did the mixing, which all countries we did the mixing trade. But if you look at all the continents, with Europe we did the mixing trade, right? So and we had been importing more than exporting, so that you had already seen. So you can look at that. So this is for India again. And if I look at the commodity wise trade, so which all commodities we have been trading more. So the maximum commodity that we have traded in 2019-20 is engineering. So where imports are more around $99,737 million, whereas the exports $76,010 million. So all these things you can have a look at. So this is how you try to understand the economic environment and how it is going to affect your business. So let me summarize the things. We talked about the macroeconomic factors, we talked about the components of economic environment, which is economic systems, economic conditions, economic policies. We tried to understand all the three, and then we looked at the global and Indian scenario. So my friends, keep your notebook and the pen or pencil ready. Here comes your quiz, 3 questions, and you can put in the chat box your answer, or you can raise your hand. So the faster finger first, that is what will follow. Singapore is what type of economy? Second is, which continent has the lowest per capita income as per 2019 World Economic Report? And third question is, which commodity is traded the most by India as per 2019 figures? I think you have written your answers. You can check the answers. Singapore is free market economy. Africa has the lowest per capita income as per 2019 World Economic Report. Engineering is the commodity which has been traded the most by India in 2019-20. If you have any questions, feel free to write to me at gsinggjint@gmail.com. These are some of the URLs I have provided. Please go there, explore, and take the liberty to learn and also have some fun. So this is something hands-on. You will love it, using the infographics, seeing the figures, and trying to understand this world in a better way in terms of the economic environment. Thank you very much. See you next time with the next lesson. Bye for now.